All right, let's begin with lesson 44 today. Today we will be dividing a decimal number by a whole number. This really is not a difficult concept. It's a simple matter of remembering one thing you already know and then just thinking through a few other components. First of all, let's begin by remembering that dividing a decimal number by a whole number is very much like dividing dollars and cents by a whole number. Notice that the decimal number in the quotient is directly above the decimal point in the dividend. In other words, as we start doing these division problems, simply mark your decimal spot directly above the spot where it occurs in your dividend, the number you're dividing. The other important aspect to remember is that decimal numbers or divisions involving decimal numbers are not written with remainders. It's just not good form. Instead, when we have a division problem involving decimals, we simply keep attaching zeros at the end of our dividend. We know we can do that already without changing the number's value, and we continue dividing until we cannot divide any longer and our problem is finished. For example, let's look at 4.2 divided by 3. In this case, I'll write 4.2, 3, and I'm just going to kind of write over some of our text. First thing I'll do is move my decimal straight up, and now I begin my regular division steps. How many times does 3 go into 4 without going over? Once. Now we multiply 1 times 3, and we find our difference, and then we bring down our next number. How many times does 3 go into 12 without going over? 4. Now if our brains were kind of thinking ahead, we know that this is going to be the end of our problem, but let's follow all of our steps. 4 times 3 is 12, the difference is 0, there's no more to bring down, and our problem is finished. In the case of 0.24 divided by 3, again, we're just going to look at the example in the book. We begin by moving our decimal straight up, and then we simply start dividing. There are 0 times that it goes into 0. How many times does 3 go into 2? 0 times. But 3 goes into 24 8 times, and our problem here is finished. In the case of 0.6 divided by 5, we're going to solve the problem this way. I'm going to do it just like we have in the solution, but I want you to see the work being done. 0.6 divided by 5. Here we go. Move your decimal straight up. We know we have 0 wholes. Ask yourself how many times 5 goes into 6 without going over? Once. Multiply 5. Subtract 1. There's nothing more to bring down. However, we already know we cannot leave a remainder when we have a problem that involves decimal numbers. So we will add a 0 on to the end of our dividend. We have not changed the value of the dividend. 0.6 is exactly the same amount as 0.60. Now, however, we have a 0 that we can bring down, and we continue with our divide, multiply, subtract, bring down pattern. How many times does 5 go into 10 without going over? 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract, the difference is 0. We don't need to worry about writing any more zeros and bringing them down. Our problem is finished, and our quotient is 0.12. Would you please take a quick look at lesson practice with me? The distance from Margaret's house to school and back is 3.6 miles. How far does Margaret live from school? Well, we know the total distance is 3.6 miles. How far does she live from school? She goes to school and back for a total of 3.6 miles. So you can pretty quickly figure out you will need to divide 3.6 by 2 in order to solve problem A. In the case of B, we're asked the perimeter of a square is 6.4 meters. How long is each side of the square? Well, you know how many sides a square has, and you will need to take the perimeter and divide it by that number, the number of sides of a square. Would you please do A, B, C, D, E, and J? Blessings on your work, boys and girls.